Hello, friends. You have waited a long time for this, and we have finally made it to the big reveal. I won't make you wait any longer to see him. My name is Ashley Clements.
And I'm Hank Green, and this is the Look Back Diaries. I feel that was really mean. That was just, it was.
Well, here's the thing. I learned to troll from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries.
Yeah,
that was like my trolling university.
Yeah, it is very Lizzie Bennet Diaries of us to be like, we're going to show you the man of the hour, who the guy you've been waiting for is the guy you've already seen twice. Yeah.
Well, they haven't seen you for months at this point, so they're thrilled that you're
jumped back in.
They're not mad at me. That's actually love if they're mad at me.
They're not mad at me. I wish they were. But
I hope they're mad at me. Hey, you know what? We haven't talked about books.
Uh-huh.
You wrote some, and they were New York Times bestsellers. No big deal. I don't know that I've actually reached out to tell you that I really enjoyed them, especially the second one. You're such a smart person with so much experience in the internet world, with such smart and sometimes terrifying ideas about where we might all be going, and you crafted that so well into a really compelling narrative with really interesting characters, and it again felt, I don't know, like I was having a really interesting conversation with you.
Thanks.
While being very entertained. Great. So
and then at the end there's no cliffhanger, which the first one, yes. The second one, no. It's done. Sorry about that cliffhanger in the first one. Lots of people saying, I hate you, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like,
did
great.
You love it though? Did you
love
soak
that?
it up?
I love that.
See, it's like, so good.
Yeah, you care.
So
now I know you care.
And you experienced that here. To those of you at home, which is also Hank and I, we are at home, but the others of you in your homes. This is the other episode in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries canon that Hank has a writing credit on, which is why he's here. Don't worry, you'll see Daniel. It's fine. Don't be mad.
Yeah.
I promise. So here's a question. Is Lizzie Bennet Diaries the first time that you wrote narrative?
In 2012, would I have written, yeah. I mean, yes. I had probably tried to write. I had probably tried to write something that didn't get finished before then. I think that I had started a fantasy novel about a kid who kind of gives up on being in his current life and is like and has adventures in a sort of urban fantasy landscape. But I don't know where that book is. But yes, Lizzie Bennet Diaries is certainly the first time that anything that I had written in fiction was published.
Let's watch the episode that you co-wrote.
Yeah, I don't even remember this episode. So great.
Well, Darcy's in it.
Yeah, right.
This is one of the first times, if not, it's not the first time that we kind of did the intro that was clearly recorded after, but it is the first time that we did a different outfit, recorded this intro on a different day.
Right.
And we left them on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I remember.
What do you remember?
I remember how this goes visually.
Yeah.
But I don't remember.
We're all very coordinated for Halloween colors. I did that on purpose. I remember when I found that dress, I was like, perfect. Because it's fall colors, and also it'll look good when we stand up. Because I had to think about stuff like that, because I knew that we would do a bunch of this in this episode.
Yeah. Please sit. That's not
awkwardly next to me. In front of this camera. It's the conceit of the show. We gotta roll with it.
If you've got something to say to me, you say it here.
His face there. Handsome.
So good.
Daniel Vincent Gord.
I didn't come to Collins & Collins to monitor corporate progress. I came here to see you.
What?
It's
this makes no sense. And this
Your
does
really
follow the pattern of the declaration in the movie. Which are all close to the book, yes.
Yeah.
And you do have to, increase dialogue when you don't have non-dialogue parts, especially on a show like this. Dialogue heavy show.
If you go back to watch early episodes where you introduce Darcy, now you really do feel like, oh, this man is super awkward. This is a super awkward man.
What is also crazy about this episode is you two wrote this pretty early on because we were auditioning Darcy's with this episode, which means that by the time we were filming it, I had done it well over 100 times. And Daniel and I had done it. We made Daniel audition 4 times.
Oh my God.
Which was absurd. But we were really trying to make sure we got the right Darcy. And we did. And then, of course, he and I had also rehearsed. So, like, this is probably the most rehearsed episode of the entire series. But it also meant that, like, we were never missing a line. Like, we did just a bunch of takes where we could just roll through this thing.
Yeah.
So we were really playing, which was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy scene there's a lot of it. But
yeah, like, we're just able to be so on top of each other. And look, rehearsal is good for actors.
Yeah.
And he came in and made all the weird impressions make sense as well.
It's very hard. I'm sorry, it's very hard not to watch this.
Yeah. Well, look, I always include a link for them to watch it without us talking over it. So
yeah. Well, I don't mean for them. I mean for me.
Oh, because you haven't seen it in like 10 years? Well, it's very well written.
I remember working on casting Daniel or casting Darcy, and just being like, all of these men are like almost too hot. Like, and I also
we had some real kind of like Abercrombie models in the mix.
Not that Daniel couldn't model for Abercrombie, but
look, go to his Instagram and see the whole package. Could have been a Wickham, if you know what I mean.
Nice.
Ouch.
Gosh.
And here's the worst part. No, Lizzie, no! Why did you say that? Ooh, Panic, 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 panic.
That's such a good twist.
It's a really fun one. Very enjoyable. Yes, which totally changes everything about the universe, right? Because she had been in this, sort of weird public-private bubble.
Sure. Yeah.
Honestly, just a little... Look, there's a lot of places in any narrative where you have to ask the audience to suspend their disbelief.
Yes.
And one of the major ways that we did is that Lizzie is simultaneously, like, famous, and that he doesn't... And no one has said, hey, I think this girl's talking about you on her thing.
Right. Yeah. How big is the audience? And, like, I don't know. First of all,
at this point, I don't think that we were getting more than 100,000 views until after Darcy Day.
Yeah.
So, you could also argue, like, well, and what's the demographic, right? Like, are they in the circles of...
That people that Darcy knows would know them for sure. I mean, he's definitely, as a character, not your typical guy. Like, he does a great job of being both, like, of doing that Darcy thing where he is both sort of like super like just disconnected from the way that normal people interact and are, but also you kind of like him a little bit. Like, you kind of like him a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though he's super weird.
What is so cool about Daniel's performance here is that this is nothing like Daniel. Like,
oh yeah.
Daniel's one of the
first time I met
most
him, I was like, "What?"
actors that I know.
Yeah.
And he's such a goofball. He is hilarious. And
He's so fun.
Like he changed his whole body, just the way he held himself to be Darcy. He showed up. We had just an unacceptable number of Darcy auditions. We were really trying to get it right.
It was really scary.
It was scary because we had really painted ourselves into a corner with all the impressions. He had been sculpted by a lot of different voices into something. And, you know, I read with every single Darcy, and some of them had obviously watched the show. They would walk in and go like, "Oh, it's you. Hi." Because for actors in Los Angeles, it is very unusual that you would show up to your first audition and be reading with the lead of the show. That's not normal. I was happy to do it because I loved being part of the casting process from the other side. Even though I wasn't like on the other side of the table actually getting to sit and watch. And I wanted to have a say in who was my Darcy. So I was very happy to do it. But it was weird for some of the Darcys. And other people had no idea who I was, thought it was very weird that I was sitting next to them. So they had just not watched the show, had no concept of what was going on. Yeah, actors, you should always check out the thing that you're auditioning for before you audition for it. Really kind of like a very basic 101 thing.
If you're going to drive all the way out, might as well watch a 5-minute episode.
Might as well like take just a quick peek at what it is. But other people we had a few in the final mix, but we ended up we had that first day, then we had callbacks, which is why Daniel had read twice at that point. We weren't 100% sure. We decided to have another day with like new Darcys. We made Daniel come to that as well. And then we had like a final callback day when there were maybe like 4 people left. So Daniel read 4 times, which is just rude. And I will say candidly to the audience that I was not Team Daniel from day one. I was arguing for somebody else, somebody who was much more like CW handsome. Mostly, I think, because I thought he was really handsome.
That was it. That was the only reason. When you're at that level, like all of them are great.
All of them are great. You know, like they would have, but all of them would have ultimately been wrong to me now. Than Daniel. And I think you were earlier on the Daniel train than I was. But I had been arguing hard for somebody else, and then after the 4th audition, the person I had been kind of in like the camp of, we gave him a note to do something, and he came across as just kind of like a privileged asshole in a way, like rather than socially awkward. And I realized that with that kind of, that if you looked like that, just this kind of like flawless person, you get treated a certain way your whole life, and it changes who you are. And that was a lovely human being in real life. He was very, very sweet. But that tiniest bit of attitude on him could just read as actually much more unlikable. And part of what had happened for me with Daniel is that I had grown to like him more and more every time I read with him. He grew on me slowly. He became incredibly handsome to me. And I realized I was actually having Lizzie's experience, that I was like, oh, I'm slowly falling for him as I get to know him. Like, this is crazy. And I wrote this impassioned, like, late night email to you and Bernie. Do you remember this?
No, I'm looking at my emails right now though, because I got very curious what I can find.
I just remember that I wrote this like essay about like why it has to be Daniel, and anything else would be a mistake. And I was really arguing against my past self, because I had made such a strong argument for somebody else, and I'd really tried to sway everyone's opinion that way. And so here I was going, it has to be Daniel. Like, he makes all of our impressions work. The audience will fall in love with him eventually. They may not immediately love him, and that is, like, in some ways great. He makes it work. He makes it make sense, and it has to be Daniel. I did this a lot at this time, where the show meant a lot to me, and the stakes felt very high to me, and sometimes I reacted a little inappropriately around that, in terms of me being like, this is direly important. But what I recall is that essentially you wrote back and you're like, yeah, Catherine and I had already decided it had to be Daniel. And I was like, well, I'm glad I wrote this.
I found the email that Catherine sent to me when she got the audition tapes. So I don't know why.
A silent producer.
Yeah. So Catherine's silent producer writes the following about Daniel. He has a lot of the same strengths as another previous person, but he has that brokenness that I was missing. I like his characterization,
yes. Well
and
put.
their chemistry is so great. And here's some other things that she said about some of the other people. This one, great, hot, super hot.
Yep.
Then another one says a possibility, but maybe with some more direction. Another person says pretty good, very hot.
Very
hot. And then
which
another
is
one
crazy
that
when
she
you
was,
consider how hot Daniel is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Very, very quickly we were on Team Daniel.
Team Daniel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think I think perhaps then me becoming Team Daniel meant like, oh, good, there's not going to be conflict about this.
That was great too. It often happens that way, where like you spend a lot of time sort of like getting to the place, and then everybody sort of ends up at the same place. You all sort of take different routes there. It's very cool. It's very cool to read that email from Catherine.
But my journey mirrored Lizzie's, which is why I was like, it has to be Daniel, because like
look, I'm Lizzie Bennett, damn it. Yeah, I went on a journey.
I'm so grateful that it was Daniel. You co-wrote this episode, as we previously discussed. You then went on to write novels. Now, aside from, of course, just wanting to keep up with John, do you think that you transitioned to novel writing because you wanted to write alone? Did Lizzie Bennett spoil you on collaborators?
I actually would be really interested to write something collaboratively again. And here's what I'll say about like the collaborative process of making Lizzie Bennett was I did not have the time to do anything like as great or complex as what was created there. So it was like the first time in my professional life where I had an idea and I'd let a bunch of talented creative people loose on it. And the reward from that, where you're just like, okay, there's a bunch of people who had this in them. And I didn't like, I was involved. I spent a lot of time on it, but not anything like the writer.
So was this an experience, something that helped you to delegate more in your life?
Yeah, it was so freeing. It was so freeing to be, and I'm not a perfectionist at all. And so there are ways in which Lizzie Bennett Diaries is not what I pictured. Tell me about that, Hank.
That sounds great.
But like,
I'm trying to be less of one.
The feeling that I try and get is that's not the choice I would have made, but like that doesn't mean that my choices would be the best choice. And like everything is subjective. There's no such thing as perfect. People like perfect for one person is different from perfect for another person. So I need to let that happen. And I remember early on, like getting some early scripts and being like, I want to rewrite these. And Bernie was like, no. I will not allow that. We don't have time for it. And like, that's, you don't have the expertise. And I was like, great feedback, buddy. Go. Thank you.
Thank you. Loud and clear.
And certainly can't fault that strategy because it's not like it didn't turn out well. So obviously, like writing on my own is something that I like a great deal. But there are times when I would love to be in a writer's room, just like synthesizing with other people, throwing ideas out, making jokes. So
it is really nice when you're stuck as a writer for someone else to like pick up the ball and bounce it against the wall for a while. It's like, oh wow. That's so lovely.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely alone here.
But yes, in terms of like my path, having a thing where you can really see if you find the right team of people, you don't need to do things. You can help other people do things. And that has been really such kind of, I think maybe the most rewarding work of my career is not like the stuff I've made, but the stuff I've helped other people make so that they can have that. Like I love the feeling of being a creator, but I kind of love the feeling of helping other people love that more, even because like the purity of the emotion isn't there in the same way, because it's always very complex when it's you. There's good parts and bad parts, and it's tough. But when you just like sort of see someone else succeeding because you were able to help them, you sort of only see it from the eyes of the fan, and it's like, oh, I'm kind of a fan, but like a fan of a thing that kind of wouldn't exist without me.
Well, we sure are glad that you had this idea and the original seed money and the clout on the internet to get people to
definitely a part of
watch it and planted all of those vital seeds in order to let this garden bloom. Sorry, I had to finish the metaphor.
Yeah, you got there.
I'm a flower.
You're a gorgeous flower. Beautiful.
Thank cute.
And that scene where you and Darcy yell at each other is a great flower.
It's a good flower.
Yeah.
It's got thorns. That's a rose with thorns. I cannot let you go without looking at the comments for this episode.
Oh my God.
They gotta be good. Top comment, Darcy, I'm going to tell Lizzie I love her. Darcy to Darcy, insult her family. Over 2,000 people have liked this. That's why it's the top comment.
Yeah.
Darcy's tiny double take when Lizzie says that the nicest thing he ever said about her was that she was decent enough. Just wait, when did I say that? Oh, I was stupid. Yeah, what a nice acting moment for Daniel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same person gets a second top comment. Juliana Mental for saying sees the OTP literally yelling at each other. Too cute. Heart is exploding.
It is pretty cute.
It's pretty cute. It's pretty cute. Well, the fans love it, and thanks for joining me to talk about it and troll them.
Yes, I hope that Daniel's coming soon.
Where's my watch?
You're not
that bit didn't work. Anything. I'm like, here we go.
All right.
Soon.